Hello you gorgeous person you, welcome to TechSperts, and today we've got something a little bit different for you. We're going to be unboxing and checking out the Huawei Nova 9, my first Huawei handset in a while. This bad boy will cost you €499 in Europe. You can't get it directly in the UK, so you will have to import. For that sort of cash, you can expect a 120Hz OLED display, a very capable 50 megapixel primary camera, but there are some caveats as well. The fact that you don't get any Google services because, of course, Huawei had that little bust up with America. So enough of my god-awful yammer, and let's whip the Huawei Nova 9 out of the box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Alright, so first up, what is in the box besides the Nova 9? You got yourself a pretty beefy 66 watt power adapter, good bit of USB action, your favourite and mine, the SIM tray pokey pin, and oh yes, of course, you do get one bundled condom case to slap on the back end of the Nova 9. Keep it wrapped up, keep it safe. And this doesn't really add any girth onto the Huawei Nova 9, but yes, it does kind of somewhat spoil the gorgeous design. You know, the best thing about the aesthetics here is the fact that the Huawei Nova 9 is pleasingly skinny. It's definitely the thinnest smartphone that I have wielded in some considerable time. You've got a glass front as well as a glass back on the Nova 9. No mention of Gorilla Glass from Huawei, although because Corning's an American company, I would presume not. And that back end is suitably shiny as well. It is a very glossy rear to the point where you could actually use it as a mirror if for some reason I just wanted to stare at my slap head all day. Because one of the problems of a glossy finish is it does pick up greasy prints and dust far too easily, so definitely keep a cleaning cloth handy. I've got to say though, I really like the clean, simple aesthetics here on the Nova 9. You've got a tiny bit of Huawei branding down below, and that's basically it. Nice double circular camera chassis there, which looks rather neat and tidy. Little elements like the red highlighting on the power button, I definitely approve of too. And you can grab the Nova 9 in a choice of 3 colours. You've got Starry Blue, Crushed Green, or this here, Black. Obviously, Huawei couldn't be bothered to think of a completely random name for that one, so it's just Black. And at 175 grams, the Nova 9 is as light as it is skinny, but there's no water resistance though, so definitely do not go getting it moist. And inside the SIM slot here on the Nova 9, as you can see there's space for 2 SIM cards at the same time, but there is no room at all for a micro SD memory card. Alright, so the Huawei Nova 9 all set up, ready for action. I've been playing with it for about 48 hours now, just getting to grips with it. And at first, I got to admit, I thought it was running Harmony OS because it certainly looks and feels and smells very similar to Harmony. But in fact, it is actually running a Motion UI, which as far as I can tell, to all intents and purposes, is basically Harmony OS. It's got the exact same setup and layout. All of Huawei's usual apps, including the likes of the app gallery, Petals search, etc. And yes, the Motion UI is not running on top of any form of Android here. It is just plain vanilla Huawei with none of those Google services. So yeah, no Google Chrome, no Gmail, no access to the Google Play Store, at least by default. So yeah, if you've used a Huawei smartphone since their fisticuffs with America, you will know what to expect. It is a similar sort of layout to Android. If you drag down, you do access the AI search rather than the notifications. You'll have to drag down from the very top in order to access those. Otherwise, if you drag down from the right-hand side, you've got fast access to the control panel, which is similar to what you'll find on MIUI from Xiaomi, which in itself was basically half-inched from good old Apple with its control center. You've got fast access to media controls, lots of toggles for your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi, all your main stuff. And if you swipe this away, instead of accessing your Google feed, what you've got is Huawei's old version, which I've momentarily forgotten the name of. It is the Huawei Assistant Today, and it's not massively dissimilar, to be honest. You've got a few widgets that you can sort of chuck in up at the top here for fast access to your calendar, your weather reports, all that shenanigans. Then if you drag up like so, you've got lots of headlines based on stuff that you've previously looked at. And yeah, the lack of Google services on here, in particular the lack of the Play Store access, will probably cause consternation to anyone who's used to Android smartphones, but you do have the Huawei app gallery. Is it anywhere near as comprehensive as the likes of the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store? Well, that's a big fat no, but it's getting better month on month. So for instance, you've got the likes of Deezer on there, you've got the likes of Sky Go, sadly no Netflix or Disney Plus or anything just yet. And you do have alternatives to the likes of Google Maps in the form of Petal Maps. And yes, I do find that the interface and the navigation, for instance, not as good as Google Maps, but there are other alternatives available on the App Store. And if you are browsing on the app gallery for a specific app and you can't find it, well, you can always try Petal Search instead, which basically allows you to search for any kind of app you could particularly think of. So as an example, let's have a bit of a scan for WhatsApp. And this will then come back at you with various options. So for instance, here with WhatsApp, you can download an APK file to install the app from the official website. And that'll then give you the link to download the APK file and install it. And of course, if you are downloading APKs, you've got to make sure you trust the source. Can be very dodgy goings on indeed if you are just downloading APKs willy-nilly without actually paying much attention. And generally sources like APK Pure can be trusted, although again, not 100% dead cert, so tread carefully, don't just download random games with Russian names that you don't know what they are. If we dive on into the Motion UI settings menu, again, it looks quite familiar for anyone who's au fait with a Motion UI from back in the day. You've got a limited amount of customization here, so dive into home screen and wallpaper. You can change up, obviously, the wallpaper, the icons. The likes of the magazine unlock feature is hidden away in here, which just flashes up some quite funky imagery whenever you activate your smartphone. And you can customize this to show images of any kind of theme. I really like the travel theme because I like torturing myself with images of places I'll probably never get to go now. You can also play around with the always on display, so you can get this scheduled to show whenever you want, and you can customize what the always on display looks like. And then back into the settings menu, this is also where you'll set up the Huawei Nova 9's fingerprint scan and face recognition. It is an in-display optical sensor. It is positioned quite low down on the screen, so I would have preferred it a little bit further up, but apart from that, no complaints at all. It seems nice and accurate, pretty responsive. You're not hanging around waiting for it to unlock. And yeah, you got the old face unlocker as well if your mitts are a bit grubby or moist or whatever, so you can get in that way too. Now, of course, as there's no Google services, you don't get a Google Assistant here on the Huawei Nova 9. What you get instead is the Celia voice assistant of Huawei's own creation. But much like the Google Assistant, you can call Celia up either by holding down the power button for a second. Otherwise, if you've turned on the voice activation, you can just say, "Hey Celia," and you're ready for action. And yeah, Celia's not exactly the smartest cookie in the jar, not quite got as much app integration as some of the other voice assistants, but a lot better than it used to be, that's for sure. You know, little things like just turning on Do Not Disturb, checking the weather, stuff like that. You generally get what you need. Whereas back in the day, it didn't matter what you're asking for, you'd pretty much just get a Google search on everything. Good old Celia can even cheer you up when you're feeling a bit down in the dumps, so hey Celia, tell me a joke.
Why don't smartphones like being brought to the toilet? Someone could steal their IP address.
Okay, not the best effort. Let's try again. Hey Celia, tell me a joke.
A joke.
Yes, a joke. What? Is that the... Oh god. As for your storage, well, it's a choice of 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage with the Nova 9. So if you are going to be shooting a lot of photos and videos, I'd recommend going for that 256 gig model because there's no microSD memory card support. Now, one of the features that immediately attracted me to the Huawei Nova 9 was the gorgeous 6.57-inch OLED display, which just curves gently around the edges of the smartphone. The very tiny bezels surrounding it. Because it's an OLED panel, of course, super bright, so visibility not a problem outdoors, even when it's actually sunny. Super punchy colors as well, really shine through when you're watching a bit of anime, a bit of animated movie action. It's a full HD plus panel, 2340 by 1080 pixel resolution as well, so nice and crisp for editing your photos, or again just kicking back with a bit of sky or whatever. And you've got a lot of customization options if you jump on into the display settings as well. You can obviously stick on the dark mode, you've got an eye comfort mode and an ebook mode as well, which is very good if you are spending a lot of time staring at that screen, especially in low light. And you can jump into the color mode and temperature as well, and you can swap it up between normal and vivid, depending on what your own personal preferences are, change the color temperature. And the Huawei Nova 9 does boast a dynamic refresh rate as well, which can flip between 60 and 120 Hz automatically depending on what apps you're using at the time, whether they actually support that high 120 FPS refresh. Not quite such a premium experience when it comes to the audio. Unfortunately, you do just have a mono speaker down below. It's not a stereo speaker setup. Let's boost that volume up, check it out.
For more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers!
So reasonably loud on that top volume, despite the fact it is just a mono speaker, though it is of course easily muffled, so you've got to be careful where you place your old pinkies. Clarity is pretty good though, even on that top volume. You do have Bluetooth 5.2 support if you want to get connected to some headphones or a speaker. Sadly, no headphone jack action here on the Nova 9, which is a real shame. Let's move on to performance, and the Huawei Nova 9 is powered by the Snapdragon 778G chipset, which powers a fair few mid-range mobiles in 2021, and that's backed by 8 gigs of RAM. These past couple of days with the Nova 9, I found the everyday experience has been perfectly smooth. Good old Emotion UI has run well. All my apps have been fine as well. A little bit of juddering when I occasionally start a video, but apart from that, nothing too traumatic, usually only lasts a few seconds. And yeah, that Snapdragon 778G chipset is more than up to the task when it comes to a bit of gaming as well. I find I could game on this thing for an hour or so. No worries whatsoever. The phone doesn't even begin to heat up. No little stumbles or anything like that. The only downside is that once again, your selection of games is actually quite limited compared with full-on Android smartphones. But you do have, again, a growing selection on here. And again, you can download APKs as long as you make sure they are from a trusted source. Because besides the lack of Google services and Play Store support here on the Huawei Nova 9, there is another disadvantage as well. The fact that the 778G doesn't actually have a built-in 5G modem, which means no 5G connectivity here on the Nova 9, which is a real bum because pretty much every single rival you'll find at this price point will offer that 5G future-proofing. No complaints when it comes to the battery life though. You've got a 4,300 milliamp cell stuffed inside of the Huawei Nova 9. Not one of the biggest capacity around, but certainly so far it's seen me through a full day. No worries, and that's with plenty of camera play, a good bit of gaming, lots of app use and all of that. And you do have 66 watt wired charging support for this thing as well, so when you want to get it powered back up again, it's nice and nippy. Now let's finish with the camera tech, and what you've got here is a 50 megapixel primary sensor. Don't have any optical image stabilization built in there, but it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And so far in my tests, this camera tech is definitely one of the best features and one of the most compelling reasons to buy the Nova 9 over many rivals. It pumps out good looking shots at all times of day with subtle effort. Even in quite tricky conditions like strong contrast scenes, you'll generally get a usable pic. I did notice some oversaturation in a couple of sample photos, but overall the colours and tones looked impressively close to what you get in real life. In low light, I was very happy with the detail levels as well. Things aren't too soft, especially if you swap to that night mode and hold still for a short duration. You can also at any point swap to the ultra wide angle shooter as well. It's an 8 megapixel sensor in this case. And yeah, this one fares a lot less well in low light, so you definitely shouldn't even really bother, to be honest. But during the day, it provides a different viewpoint when needed. And also on that back end, you've got a depth sensor for your portrait shots, and you've also got a macro shooter as well if you're into that. No zoom lens to speak of. You do get plenty of bonus features packed here in the Nova 9 as well, including of course the good old dependable Pro mode. Most users won't even need to touch this because the auto mode is so good, but if you do want to get a very particular kind of vibe, then you can hit that up. And this also allows you to swap to good old RAW format as well if you do want to edit your pics on the fly. And then of course good old video modes where you've got a good bit of customization. You can change up the aspect ratio, change the video resolution all the way up to 4K res, which is what I kept it at for the testing. Although that does mean you can't change the frame rate. It's stuck at 30 FPS for Ultra HD. You'll have to bump it down to full HD resolution if you want 60 FPS. And again, I was pretty happy with the results spaffed out by the Huawei Nova 9. The audio's clearly picked up as long as it's not too gusty out. The picture quality is fine at Ultra HD. Just once again, don't swap to that ultra wide angle shooter at night time. And then last up, around the front end of the Nova 9, you've got a 32 megapixel selfie shooter, and again, really solid for the price. Certainly much better than the Google Pixel 6 one, which I reviewed earlier. You've got a wide range of portrait modes if you want your face to stand out from the background, and again, even in low light, you'll get some pretty good pics for this price point. And that right there, my pretties, in a neat, tidy little nutshell, is the Huawei Nova 9, and there's a lot to like about it, including the excellent camera tech slapped around the back there, and the front end as well. The gorgeous OLED display, which just curves neatly around the phone. Got very respectable performance and battery life, but, and it is a very big but, so Mix-a-Lot would definitely approve. You got no Google services on there as per standard, and no 5G support as well, which for this sort of price point just ain't good enough. So whether the Nova 9 is for you really depends on how heavy an emphasis you place on the camera tech and the gorgeous display, and whether you actually are going to miss those Google services or not. So that's this Baldy's general thoughts and verdict anyway, but what about you fine folk at home? What do you reckon? Are you tempted by the Nova 9? It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for lots more sexy tech. There's just an endless stream of it at the moment, frankly. It's almost Christmas and there's still with the launches. Come on. When does it end? And have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.